All right. Good afternoon. My name's Chris Lukey, host of the podcast Manufacturing Happy Hour. And we're coming at you live from the 2024 Robotics Summit and Expo here in Boston, Massachusetts. And I'm very excited to be joined by Carlos Bilecki, who is the Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Performance Motion Devices. Carlos, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Chris.
And we're going to start this off in true manufacturing happy hour fashion. The way we would talk about what we do in our industry as if we're having a beer with one another. Okay. So when someone asks you what Performance Motion Devices does, how do you describe that as if you're having a drink with them?
It's a great question, and this is how I explain it to my wife and kids, so hopefully that'll work. So what we do is, if you think about robots, one thing about robots is that they move, whether it's an arm or turning wheels or whatever. And so if you kind of peel the layer back there, what's making that movement happen? It's electric motors. Mm-hmm. And those electric motors, in order for those arms and wheels to turn in the right direction or at the right speed, they need to be controlled electronically. And that's called motion control electronics. That's what our company does. We make chips, modules, and boards that control electric motors, which control robots.
So you're doing the stuff that a lot of people don't see when they first look at the robot.
You got it. It's all in there, and people just see the motion. They don't see what we're doing.
So as someone that's a supplier of motion controls for folks that are actually making robots, what is the primary challenge you see robot manufacturers facing today?
Oh, absolutely. We see this all the time. I would say there's two things. One is time, and the second is engineering resources. So by time, what I mean is that they want to get products out faster and faster. And by engineering resources, what I mean is they don't really have the staff to do it. Robots, no matter what they do, are pretty complicated machines to design. And so they're faced with that challenge of, how do I get this done? I don't have enough people, and I need to get it out quickly.
Yeah, so then as a supplier of technology for robotics, you're doing this for life sciences, you're doing this for automation. At a macro level, and you kind of hinted at this in your last answer a bit, what are the things you see driving the accelerated adoption of robotics right now?
Well, when we look at these problems from our customers' point of view, what we're seeing is that the business for them is to replace slow, expensive processes. Mm-hmm. And so to give you an example, in life sciences, there's companies out there, for example, that are replicating blood cells or stem cells or whatever. And what they have, the way they do it right now, it's a very manual process where you have a very highly paid, skilled person with maybe a PhD in biology, mm-hmm. and they're looking at a microscope and they're picking out bad cells so that they can keep the good ones for their process. Mm-hmm. So if you can imagine the throughput on that, you get very few, low number of blood cells per week or per month. And you have people who are paid a lot of money to do that. Mm-hmm. So there are companies that look at problems like this and they say, well, let's make a machine and automate it. Mm-hmm. And so you get the machines that can do what that person is doing. You can create it so that it's doing what that person's doing. And after a very short period of time, it pays for itself and then some. So that's basically it, is replacing these processes with machines.
What's one of the reasons, we were just talking about the acceleration of robotics, what's one of the reasons that, in your mind, life sciences seems to be one of the industries that's really diving into it quicker than other, let's say, maybe more antiquated industries?
Absolutely. Well, there's a lot of, life sciences is one of those areas where there's a lot of evolution and there's a lot of advancement happening at a very rapid pace. Mm-hmm. With that advancement in science, though, sometimes the processes themselves are very manual because they're new. And so, as happens in many industries, you start out, doing a lot of things manually, and then you figure out how to do it in more and more efficient ways. And in this case, it's a natural for automation and robotics.
How do you keep pace with all the changes? This is kind of a personal question, but what are the things you do to make sure you're adaptable as a leader in this, let's say, robotics and technology ecosphere?
to me, it's really not a big mystery. The market is your customers.
Mhm.
So I get out there and chat with them,
Mhm.
and so shows like this,
Mhm.
and travel, and we've had this week we had a couple of customers come to visit us. But having that dialogue, asking the right questions, trying to see things from their point of view, is what keeps, at least for me anyway, keeps my hand on or my finger on the pulse of the market.
So you're out there, you're listening to what's going on. What is your, let's say, your personal bet, your own big bet for where robotics is going to go, or where motion control might go as well? Since that's really the area you're touching, you can answer either way. Where do you see this going in the next 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, well, from a motion control point of view, I see it being all about miniaturization. So things just have to keep getting smaller and smaller and more powerful. That's kind of a typical technology thing. If we go back many, many years, computers used to be the size of a room. Now there's one in your pocket. And so we see the same thing happening in automation and in robotics. And so what we do to respond to that, our kind of unique approach, is that we do offer motion control solutions that work with the initial prototypes that might be a little bit bigger.
Oh, really? Okay.
We do. But then we also have a migration path all the way down to small chips so that our customers can then migrate their designs to much smaller form factor. And the beauty of the approach that we've tried to take is that we have our own motion control language that customers use, and whatever software they write on the prototype systems will then run on the final system. So they don't have to keep redeveloping the software; they just can keep miniaturizing the actual hardware.
So in a world where we often say you're growing with your clients, you're actually shrinking with your clients.
We're shrinking with our clients, and that's where they want us to take them. I would say the other trend to your question is we're seeing these even large companies that you think of as having a lot of engineering resources and a lot of money to invest. They're shrinking their engineering teams. They need smaller teams to do more with less. And so what we're seeing is there's sort of a growing hunger out there for more total solutions. An example that I might give you is, it's great to have a chip that you can give to an engineering team to develop a system around. But if you develop a small system using that chip and essentially do a lot of the work that they would otherwise have to do, there seems to be a lot more hunger for a solution like that, and that's the way we're heading.
Curious what an engineer does to adapt to that, right? If you're having a smaller team, are they expecting the engineers to be more versatile? What do you say, if you have visibility to that human aspect of it? I'd be curious to hear.
I think that's a great question. I think the engineers are starting to become a little bit more generalists. So where when you have the luxury of a lot of resources, you can really have a bunch of people specializing in many different areas. But now they have to kind of see the whole picture, the whole system, and deal with suppliers like us who can give them that whole solution rather than a point kind of solution.
Very interesting. I love both of those thoughts around miniaturization, the effect of having a shrinking engineering team. My last question is, do you have a call to action for the audience before we close things out here?
I absolutely do. I think that for people in the audience who are interested in motion control solutions like what we've been talking about here, they can check us out at pmdcorp.com. And there's a lot of information there. And it's not just about our products, I might say. We have a lot of educational content on there. So if people want to learn about motion control or compare and contrast, there's a lot of free information. You don't have to even buy our products, but you can get educated on there.
Excellent. Well, thank you for providing us with those resources for everyone out there. Thank you for tuning in. Carlos, appreciate your time.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Cheers.
Thank you.